Welcome. Today we're going to be becoming fluent with the augmented triad. This one is one of the more rare ones that we experience in music. And what does it mean that we're going to be getting fluent with it? We're going to make sure to understand this concept and not just learn it in the quickest and easiest way, but instead build up 3 points of connection to better understand it. Today we will be learning a quick shortcut to build up our augmented triad from our previous knowledge of our other triads. We'll also be seeing its connection to the whole tone scale. And finally, we'll go over one of its only uses in tonal music. Let's get started.
To start understanding our augmented chord, we first want to understand that it's built from stacking two major thirds on top of each other. If I take my C major chord, my major third is from C to E. And now from E, if I take my E major chord, I get the major third from E to G sharp. So with C, E, G sharp, I would have my C augmented chord. This is a chord that features the sound of dissonance, or a fighting sound to the notes, that creates tension that we can then resolve through use of tonic chords like major and minor. One of the reasons for this dissonance is the fact that from C to G natural, we would normally have a perfect fifth. Now, from C to G sharp, we've expanded it, and we've created the augmented fifth, which is actually where the augmented chord gets its name. So that way, whether you want to think about it as major third, or major third, augmented fifth, these are both great ways to understand the concept of an augmented chord. There's a shortcut we can use though. Assuming we already know all of our major chords, we can simply think about the augmented chord being the major chord with a sharp 5. My C major, now sharp 5, the G sharp, now, since this doesn't actually feature the perfect fifth in the chord, let's do this exercise chromatically, going through all of our major chords. And we're back to C major. This not only will help you get used to the shapes that are used in these chords, but also help your ear distinguish more between the major and augmented sound. Another way to think about our augmented chord is actually through a different scale called the whole tone scale. The whole tone scale is built up of only whole steps. And since it's not major or minor, it doesn't have to follow the rules of only using sharps or only using flats, and not all 7 letters need to exist within the scale. If I take my C whole tone scale, I have my C, D, E, my whole step up going to the F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and the whole step above going back to the C. And we notice there was no B used in this scale. A fun fact to notice about the whole tone scale, there's really only 2 whole tone scales on the piano. We have the one that lays across the 3 white keys and the 3 black keys. And if I was to reorient them through a different letter name, it's still the same notes if I take my D whole tone scale. The spelling is different, but for all intents and purposes, it's kind of the same scale. There's going to be a lot of enharmonic spellings, but very few new shapes. Let's go over our second whole tone scale from the D flat. D flat, E flat, F, G, A, B, D flat. And once again, we didn't actually have a C named within the scale, and that's fine. And same thing, I can start it on an F, going F to F, F, G, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, F, and it would have different letter names. But for all intents and purposes, it's really the same scale, which leaves us only 2 whole tone scale patterns on the piano. This allows us to use whole tone 5-note scales to help us find our augmented chords. If I have a C 5-note scale, C, D, E, F, G. And now for the whole tone scale, we must use F sharp and G sharp. Now I can simply play the 1, 3, 5, C, E, and G sharp, and I have my C augmented chord. As since we're building a scale out of only whole steps, and a major third is always built up of exactly 2 whole steps, it gives us another shortcut to help us solve these augmented chords. It also presents an idea of when we would be using these augmented chords. Songs that heavily feature the whole tone scale would usually heavily feature augmented chords in their harmony as well. If I take from my F, F, G, A, B, C, I need my C sharp for the whole tone scale. And there I have my F augmented. We'll do one last one. We'll take our D flat, D, E, F, G, A, and I need to have this A natural for my whole tone scale. And there we get our D flat augmented. More modern pieces that heavily feature the whole tone scale are just one of the places we see the augmented chord. While this chord is definitely one of our least commonly seen in music, it still can be used sometimes, and there are common applications for it. Another one would be in minor. So if I take my A minor scale, and with the G sharp, that would be my A harmonic minor scale. I now have a chord here on C, C, E, and the G sharp from the harmonic minor scale, creating the C augmented chord within my key of A minor. The way that we use this chord in a chord progression would be in substitution of the 5 chord. We can start off taking the subdominant D to the dominant E, resolving it to the tonic A. I can now use the chords from the scale, my D minor, E major, to A minor. We have a nice simple chord progression, 4, 5, 1. Now, if we want to spice this up a little bit, we can also incorporate the C augmented chord as a substitution for our E. As we notice, there still is an E in this chord and the G sharp. Really what we're doing is we're just moving our B to a C. So here I have my D minor, I have my C augmented, and my A minor. And that'd be one of the primary ways we resolve the dissonance of our augmented chord. You'll notice in my left hand, I keep playing D, E, A, even though I'm playing a C chord. And now for one extra layer, we'll actually keep the C and E as common tones between C augmented and A minor, allowing our G sharp to resolve up to the A, leading tone to tonic. Good, let's do one more scale. We'll take our E harmonic minor. My 2 sharps now are the F sharp and the D sharp, the leading tone added from the harmonic minor scale. I would have my subdominant, dominant, tonic, my A minor, B major, E minor. Now we substitute for the 3rd tone, the mediant augmented chord. Now we keep the common tones in the bottom, allowing the D sharp to resolve up to the E, our leading tone to tonic.
Now that we understand the sound, usage, and the building blocks of our augmented triad, we can feel much more comfortable when we would come across this sound, both in our tonal music, as well as in some more contemporary music that stretches the limits of what we might consider to be tonal music, but have a much better understanding rather than having to memorize a bunch of individual notes and cross our fingers that we are correct. Happy practicing.